well, obviously only as much as you can share, but what's your process to scout an enemy team? So let's say well, actually that'd be even the first question. When do you start? If we do you look 2 weeks in advance, you look 3 weeks, or is it just who are we playing this week? Like how does that actually work step by step?
So step by step, we can just start like at the beginning of the split because it looks increasingly different throughout the split. Like in the beginning, honestly, for week one, you have borderline nothing to scout. For this year, we have some scouting, right? Like going into spring, you have like some winter games, but starting at the very start of winter, you have nothing. Like you have solo queue accounts, and some players are lazy and they don't hide their accounts, so you'll get some info on a champion that didn't know existed. But the further you get into the split, but I guess more so the further you get into the year, the more you'll start seeing patterns repeat themselves, and it becomes like more exciting for me at least. Because you also get to sort of see like a team's development if they've changed a lot from winter to summer or from spring to summer, or if they haven't. And if they haven't, usually that's a pretty good sign that you have a good shot at beating them because like you have to develop in this game. So my process looks like in best of ones, it's usually the like scouting starts pretty late because like the schedule is so tightly packed. Like we have three scrim days, one off day, 3 game days, which means that for best of one, we do it whenever there is time, which there isn't really. Um, Luckily, it's only 3 weeks, and for week one, there's nothing you can do realistically. For week two, a lot of the time, patterns haven't actually like shown themselves to an extent where I feel comfortable making a game plan around them. But by the time of week three, you've had 6 games, and usually with 6 games data, there will be some patterns of some players that you can punish. So by week three, usually I start a bit earlier, just to make sure that I cover those 6 games. And then going into the best of series are the most fun for me because that's where in the past what we did was that we would present the scouting report the day before the match day. So sort of gives the player some time to like soak in the knowledge and have it like in the back of the mind and then do small reminders on game day. But I push really hard, I think, in 2022, no, 2023, to move the process in a way where I would instead of doing the off day together with the rest of the team, I would do my scouting day then, and then present it on day one of scrims, and then have my off day another day. Because that way we could sort of target practice with the scouting report in mind if there was something that was really important for us to work on during that week. And I think that when we've done that, like you immediately have like deliberate practice in your scrim, like on top of what other team goals you have, and I think that's been the most successful for me.
Yeah, I love that. Even just for the fact of the variety, like we just spoke about, but especially considering you can keep everyone, develop a specific strategy throughout the week to play against a specific opponent. I think it's great. So when you're looking at someone to scout, one of the questions that I get a lot from people who are just moving into it for the first time, it'd be great to get your opinion on when is it a pattern and when is it just a play that they did one time? So if they set up Dragon in a certain way in week one and it's like very telegraphed and it kind of looks like this is a set play, but they might never do it again. Like when does it a pattern and when is it just a play that they did this one time?
So normally, I have like I work in actually I'll show you here. Maybe I'm not sure if you have a way to show it, but I'll show you how we do it if I can find it.
I don't, unfortunately.
Okay, all good. So normally I just work like in a Google Docs and I take like all of my notes and it looks like a mess. Once that mess is then done and I've watched like my 6 games plus, um very often we'll start splitting it into sections of, let me see if I can find it for you here.
I can put it on in post afterwards, but for now I can't actually see it myself, I think.
All good, all good. Okay, basically what we do is that we have like a Google Docs where all of my standard notes goes, and then once they become patterns, which I would say is when a team does something 4 times or more. So if they have the same approach to Drake, if they have the same approach to Grubs, if they react the same way on weak side, or don't exactly react the same way on weak side when they're taking Grubs on bot side, for example, and sort of the way that my brain functions is that, like, initially I just passively observe everything. I'm not looking for anything in particular when I scout, which is very different from looking to get better at League of Legends Baron setup, for example, where you look for specific things. I try to just let my brain pick up on everything. Um, but but at least my experience so far has been that all teams in the world has very 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 strong patterns, especially around set piece plays, how they play out their level one, their early game pathing, and what that means when they have priors, when they don't have priors, and of it, like the big ones are Nashers and Heralds and Grubs, because you have to have an opinion on these neutrals when you're a team. So I would say, like, 3+ can do, but usually 4+ of similar approaches to situations is what I'm looking for. Hey, heal, that's my water. Cat, go away. Sorry.
That's all right. It's all right. And then to you mentioned you put together a report and doing it earlier now than you used to. What kind of things go in the report? Because that's also one of the questions. I mean, you said already it's only stuff that we can actually capitalize on. So is that a crucial thing where everything that you're reporting on isn't just the first step of they do this, but also the second step of we're going to do this because of that? Like what goes in the report? And I think one of the things that I see quite often, especially when people are new to this, is just so much goes in, like just everything goes in, any single pattern that you could recognize. So how do you put together a report?
So the way that I would put together a report is by, one, highlighting their most common patterns rather than every single pattern there is, because there will be something like when I do a scouting report, there will be something that I can barely scrape 3 examples of together, which then, in my opinion, very often isn't a super strong pattern, and it isn't something that we should actually actively play around. And then you will have patterns that there are 8, 9, 10 examples of, because this is just how this team plays League of Legends. This is how they fundamentally view League of Legends, and those are the important ones, right? Because realistically, there's a few elements to creating a scouting report, right? It has to be short and crisp. It has to look clean, because you are working with esports players who plays computer games all day long, and their attention span, like, usually I will, like, I'm good at presentation, and I'm fine at speaking. I will hold their attention for 20 minutes, right? If I go like 40 minutes, 50 minutes, I've lost 1 or 2 or 3 players. Like, they're gone. Which means that I need to be hyper focused in my choices of what I choose to present to them that are valuable in a scouting report. So those things will typically be things that, one, we can either punish, like, through stuff that we are already doing as a team and the way that we play League of Legends, or two, things that we have, like, previously or continuously getting punished by, that is very good to be aware of. So making them hyper aware of sequences that we are currently already struggling with, and if we play into this play pattern, we are gonna get fucked. So that's usually how I would structure it. I would try to keep it to a minimum of, like, 4, maximum 5 big scouting patterns, because, like, as soon as you start having first Drake, third Drake, Herald, Grubs, top dive, weak side, jungle camps, like, if you have 7, 8, 9 topics, there's no chance your players are gonna remember it anyway. So important part is really just making sure that, like, I know my scouting report has been successful when we go on game day. And the way that we structure game day is that we do, like, a pre warm up where we just go and we move our body a bit, and during that sort of, like, physical warm up, I will just ask them, okay, what are the important things about this team? And whenever they can tell me my 4 or 5 points, or earlier in the split, it was Mac because he couldn't join the studio. Whenever they could tell us those 4 or 5 points in that moment, it'd be a good scouting report. Um, in the past, what we did was that we did, like, reminders for scouting report, like when we did the huddle. But we've now changed that away from doing the scouting reminders, like when we do the warm up, and then in the huddle we just remind them of what our players are good at, and then they go in and they do those things.
Great. Yeah, I love the consistency and also the getting them, involved as well, like keeping the reminders and keeping the questioning, I think is a perfect way to approach it. In terms of the report, I mean, especially now when you're doing it a little bit earlier, do you do a different one for coaches? Is it the same one, or do you sit down after your off day and if it's Mac who's deciding the sort of structure of the week, do you go through it in more detail with him or the same or?
So honestly, Mac and I just have a lot of buy-in with each other, and we trust each other really well. So if I come and tell him like, here's the TLDR of my scouting report, I think we should focus on X, Y, Z, then he will just trust me, and we'll go by that. Because one thing that we do find is, finding times for meetings throughout the week very often ends up being like really inefficient, because meetings are just long. Like meeting just takes time, and there's multiple opinions, and people need to have time to speak, and especially bigger staff meetings where you have to have your analyst from France and your performance manager here. So as much as humanly possible, we try to minimize how often we sit together. We do like a weekly like staff meeting, and that's like our big time consuming meeting. But for scouting reports, honestly, unless there's a few specific like clips or something I want to show from the scouting report, I'll just let him know what the TLDR is, and also how I think that TLDR impacts drafts. So like if we need to have a bigger priority on prepping for hard prio lanes, or how we want to approach counter picks on red side, stuff like this.